Family takes photo, wife files for divorce after seeing this detail. A woman has revealed how she decided to divorce her husband after noticing a tiny detail in some tagged Facebook photos. U.S. woman Tyler Page took to TikTok to explain how she saw her then husband tagged in some photos from a nightclub social media page. Watch Tyler explain her story in the video above. Proving the devil is truly in the details, the woman noticed her partner wasn't wearing his wedding ring in the image that he was featured in with a bunch of girls. Quite hilariously, he exclaimed the venue had photoshopped his ring off, which she called the most ridiculous lie I've ever heard. The clip was posted last year, but is still going strong in 2021 with over a 2.2 million views. The video ends with the woman telling her followers the couple is now divorced. She also posted follow-up videos explaining more about the story. After realizing he was married to a Photoshop expert and no nightclub photographer is going to take all that time to Photoshop his ring off, he changes his story, she said in a later video. He tells me that he must have taken his ring off when he washed his hands and forgot to put it back on. Huh? What a convenient time to forget to put your ring back on. Quite alarmingly, a number have jumped in on the comments to share similar stories. Oh, my ex-husband's ring fell off in his Instagram stories, but somehow he found it and put it back on every day before he walked in the door, one person said. My ex was on a dating site. His excuse was it was an old profile and dating sites make the accounts of hot people look attractive to get more people, another said. My ex-husband came home with a hickey. He said he fell and hit his neck on the toilet, a third chimed in. What happened with this family was shocking. Divorce is sometimes a part of life. Although incredibly difficult, relationships often come to an end for the best. While divorces can be traumatic for the partners involved, they can be particularly heartbreaking for their children. When Sarah found a new job, David was delighted for her, but it wasn't long before things didn't add up. She started to come home with bags of shopping, way over her budget. That's when he started to speculate that Sarah was lying to him. David's stomach dropped as he looked at the picture she sent to him. His shock quickly turned to anger. David had the life he always dreamed of. He lived in a comfortable home in a nice neighborhood in L.A. beside the beach. He married the woman of his dreams and had great plans for their future together. However, life was about to throw him a curveball that left his plans breaking at the seams. Love at first sight. David worked as a carpenter and loved it. His work brought him to cool places and interesting people he'd never usually meet. It's how he met Sarah. 3 years ago, he got called to renovate a famous photography studio in the city that was constantly full of models, one of whom was Sarah. As soon as he laid eyes on Sarah, he knew she was something special. She was a gorgeous, a stunning young woman who wouldn't be out of place on the cover of Vogue. Their relationship blossomed fast. After just 1 year of dating, David proposed. Everything seemed perfect, but it wasn't. Not all sunshine and rainbows. Sarah at times could be very selfish and shallow. She blamed it on her childhood troubles and her parents' divorce, and like most men in love, David dismissed her troubling behavior. Soon enough, they were married. Sarah moved into David's condo. At the start, things were going wonderfully, but then David started getting suspicious. David began to feel uncomfortable with the type of work Sarah was doing. When he first met Sarah, she was working on fashion magazines that involved dressing in classy and elegant pieces, but somewhere along the line things changed. She would leave the house wearing more and more revealing clothes to pose in risky photo shoots. He had enough. Secret ambition. David told Sarah how he felt and urged her to find a different job. Her response surprised him. She agreed and told him she had been thinking about pursuing teaching. Her surprising ambition delighted David. He knew she'd have to go back to college, but he didn't care. He trusted her to know what was best for their future, but his trust would be betrayed. Financial stress. With Sarah out of work and paying for college fees, it wasn't long before they ran into financial trouble. From the outside looking in, their relationship looked perfect, but it wasn't. They were both under a lot of financial pressure, and soon it would all reach a boiling point. As the weeks passed, David noticed a strange change in Sarah. Suspicions. Most of David's friends were jealous of him for landing such a beautiful wife, but some were slightly more suspicious. One of David's friends, Josh, thought that Sarah was one of the most self-centered and attention-seeking people he'd ever met. Hindsight is 20/20, and unluckily for David, he didn't have the ability to foresee what would happen, yet the warning signs were most certainly there. Trouble in paradise. They began to spend less and less time together. Sarah was never home. She spent most of her time in college studying, so when she mentioned she was going to find a part-time job to help with the bills, David began to feel hopeless. He thought their relationship was already in turmoil, but it was about to get much worse. Hired. Sarah had little experience outside of modeling and found it nearly impossible to find any work. David was there for every disappointment until one day she told him that she finally got a job. She got a job as a hotel receptionist in the city, but there was a catch. Excessive money. It wasn't long before things didn't quite add up. Sarah would come home with bags of shopping every other day. David knew the designer items she had picked up were way out of her budget. That's when he started to speculate that Sarah was lying to him. He quickly thought of a plan to catch her in the act and desperately hoped she'd prove him wrong. Detective work. David called the hotel Sarah was working at first. When he asked to speak to her, his request was met with confusion. "No one named Sarah works here," the receptionist said. David's stomach dropped. He opened his messages to text his wife. "I'm missing you today," he typed. "Can you send me a photo of you to get me through the day?" Her reply confirmed the worst nightmares. No wedding ring. "Of course, babe," she replied. "Give me a second to leave my desk." Another moment later, she sent in 2 photos. The first looked staged, and the second broke David's heart in 2. David's heart stopped as he looked at her ring finger. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. There was only one possible explanation for this, and it left David desperate for revenge. Heartbreak. David felt his heart crumble into a million pieces. This was the woman he wanted to marry and grow old with, but he kept his cool. He didn't lose his temper. The bizarreness of Sarah's behavior made David start to suspect that she might not be remaining faithful. After all, she had the perfect opportunity to have an affair when he was away, and she suddenly seemed to have a lot of money. Divorce. David waited for Sarah to come home and confronted her immediately. He showed her the cute photos she meant to send and exposed them for what they are, calculating images of deceit. "I'm filing for a divorce in the morning," he said. "No," she cried. "Please let me explain. Then you can decide to stay or leave." But David wasn't going anywhere. Get out. David told Sarah to get out. He handed her the key to a hotel room, $50 for a cab fare, and told her to leave. Sarah kept screaming, crying, apologizing, and proclaiming her love for him. After seeing that her tears weren't getting her anywhere, she finally confessed. Ready to talk, she sat David down. The truth? Tearfully, she reminded him about how difficult it was for her to find work. "I was getting rejection after rejection. We needed money, David, and with my experience, no one wanted me. The only skill I could use to my advantage was my appearance." She admitted that she didn't get offered a job in a hotel and revealed something else entirely. Explanation. She explained that she wasn't wearing the wedding ring because of her new job as a bartender at a fancy speakeasy just outside the city. It was the only application that appreciated her experience as a model and didn't snub her for it. But to play the part, the company had her dressing in revealing clothes, and she knew David wouldn't approve, but it paid well. But David didn't believe her. Could he trust her? Sarah begged David to understand, but he said he needed to sleep on it. Now that he knew Sarah had already lied to him once, how could he trust her when she said she was telling the truth? And how did a bartending job explain all the money she suddenly seemed to have? Something wasn't adding up. Calmer. In the morning, he woke up calmer. He told her that she shouldn't have acted behind his back and that whatever struggle she was having, they could work through it together. He didn't believe her, though. He just needed to bide his time to get evidence of what she was really up to. Gathering evidence. Over the next few weeks, David watched Sarah very closely. He noticed she always took her phone with her when she went to the bathroom, and she seemed to spend an unusual amount of time in there. And she was always on her phone. They hardly spoke anymore. And there were other troubling signs. One was all the new clothes that kept appearing. Lingerie. When David rifled through the shopping bags she was always bringing home, He realized she was massing a rather large collection of lingerie, but he never saw her wearing it. Surely her bartending job didn't insist that she served drinks in her underwear. David waited until finally an opportunity to catch her in the act presented itself. Out of town. When David was commissioned to do a big remodeling job at an upmarket restaurant out of town, he decided that he would surprise his wife then. After all, she had the perfect opportunity to do whatever she wanted while he was away. She wouldn't even have to be careful. But things only went downhill from there. Arriving early. David traveled for the remodeling job that would take around 5 days to complete, but he decided to come home 2 days early. Sarah didn't expect him to come home for a couple more days, so when David entered the house, it caught her completely by surprise. Unfortunately, what David saw confirmed his worst suspicions about the woman he had once thought was the one. Surprise. David's world fell to pieces when he walked into their bedroom. Sarah was caught completely off guard. It was all the evidence he needed. He calmly told the other man to get out. He immediately filed for divorce, and Sarah didn't get a cent. After all, the condo was in his name, and she had been the one to break their wedding vows. But if David thought that Sarah would just turn the other cheek, he was very much mistaken.